Hey there, this is Jen T. Grace, founder of Publisher Purpose, and I am sitting down today with Erica Vogel, author of Advice from Your Trans Aunty. How are you?
You know, it's been a week, but I'm doing all right. I'm doing good, Jen. How are you?
I can say pretty much the same. And you know, most of the time when I'm starting off a conversation like this, I am in such a place of pure joy because the thing that we've been working on for as long as we've been working on it is out in the world. And yet we have like the positive side of like, wow, you did this big thing. And then we have the weight of said big thing and the world that is wrapped around.
Yes.
So it's mixed emotions for me today.
It is. I am really excited for this day to come. I have been working on this book for 13 months when I started, right? And then we met 6 months ago and got going immediately on the process. And, you know, there are some things about the process to me that have been harder in our work together than writing. And as an impatient person and a person who knows what's in this book and wanting it to be in the world, waiting these 6 months while we were busy has been quite difficult.
Yeah, but we're here and your book is glorious. I think it came out fantastic. I love that you have your signature glasses on right now in real time. So a little sneak peek on the inside. The glasses show up at the top of each chapter for folks. So we have a lot to cover in a short period of time. But before we kind of dive into the present day and what people can do and how people can be supportive, I want to first kind of talk about what inspired you to write this book and who it is for.
Yeah. So I've always been a person that wants the best for the people around me, for the people I know and that I don't know. That's generally how I go through the world. I am an optimistic person in a healthy way, right? And I've always had people coming to me for some kind of advice, right? Typically, it has been career advice. How do I advance in my career? How do we have better leadership? How do we, all those things that go through at work. And occasionally it's been life advice. How do I get through this difficult moment with my partner or my kid or my friends or my family? Because I've been through and seen a lot. That's like chapter 1 of this book is really a very short list of what has happened in Erica's life. And being trans is something I've dealt with my whole life, but being out as trans has only happened in the last couple of years, right? So very quickly, I went from a person that people wanted advice from for general things to people wanting to hear about the trans perspective and wanting my thoughts and ideas. And in the workplace especially, but even outside the workplace in just social media and advocacy, I have answered hundreds of different questions about life in the process. Sure, I talk about the medical aspects for people when they want to hear that, and that's probably far too boring for most of the people on this or viewing this later on. Mostly what I talk about is life in the process. And so in the fall of 2023, I know I wanted to write a book for a while. My grandfather was an author, as is my uncle. My partner has 2 academic books out there and 16 academic articles. I'm the grandchild and niece of English professors. Like, writing is kind of what our family does. My mom was a poet, right? Unpublished, but a really good poet. But I always felt this sort of disconnect in what I should write about. And it turns out what I needed to write about was me, not business necessarily. And so while sort of figuring out what I wanted to do, I didn't really want to do a memoir. There's a lot of great trans memoirs. I didn't really feel like, while I have an interesting story, that would do what I wanted to do. I happened to be out to lunch with a good friend of mine, Chika is her name. She was getting ready to head off to India for 6 months to go to several weddings with families and spend time there because that's where she's from. And she said, Erica, you're so good at giving people advice. You're answering their questions in ways that help them think about what to do without telling them what to do. You should write about that. And I was really kind of blown away by that idea because that's just wildly simple. And it is what I was doing already, which is probably, if you're thinking about writing a book, write about the thing you know really well.
Mhm.
So I went home and I started writing this book. And what you see is what came out. Who this is for, obviously, is for trans people, right? Advice from your trans auntie. I'm trans. I'm your auntie. That makes sense. But it's also for the people in your life that are your family or friends or coworkers or live in your neighborhood, people that are allies and want to know more. It's really for everybody who wants to understand the trans perspective, what happens in our lives, and for people who want to know how to be better allies, because that's in there too. So it covers a wide gamut, right? But it is obviously very trans focused.
Mm-hmm. And when you had first told me, when we first met and you told me the title of it, I was like, oh my God, this is amazing. I was like immediately hooked, because what I feel like what it does is it just humanizes you. It humanizes the trans experience. It is relatable because there's this auntie perspective. Because I feel like so many people just wish they had that auntie they can go to ask the hard questions
Yeah.
to. And in this case, it's so specific to this journey. And I just feel like when you said it, I was like, this is going to meet people exactly where they are and give them exactly what they're looking for. And that brings me such joy. And I've said this to you many times, I've been waiting patiently for this to be done, because it's, like
Yeah.
one of my favorite things that we've been working on for a while, because I just can see the impact it's going to have. And at the same time, we are now shifting into an even more of a disastrous climate that is going to be increasingly more difficult than it has already been for trans and non-binary people in this world, and so especially in this country. So how do you think, like, if we went back in time to 6 months ago when we're first like, oh my God, this is coming, we both knew what was at stake ahead. So this is not a surprise. I don't think either of us are like shocked by this information. But how do you see, from an ally standpoint, I think is my first question, because this book is for allies. I think there's such an opportunity for someone who's like, I just want to learn more so I can be that auntie to someone else. Maybe I'm not the trans auntie, but I can be that person to someone who just really needs some love and support and guidance along their way. How do you think it might change, given kind of how polarized and excited people are in some ways to galvanize?
Yeah. When I wrote this book, when I sat down to write this book, this was always kind of like, what happens after this administration, where things have been okay.
Mhm.
And yet we had record levels of anti-trans legislation across the United States, but also even those that were enacted being defeated regularly after the fact, right? So, and kind of like this sort of will we or won't we kind of place.
Mhm.
And knowing this was coming, I really didn't write this book from the doom and gloom perspective, but I did write it from, here's how to understand and think critically about your life as a trans person, or about the trans people in your life, and understand where we're coming from, so that you have a platform from which to make good decisions. Going forward, obviously things are going to change. We know that things will be messy at first, and they'll get worse. Based on what we've seen the last couple of days, heavy on the messy side for a while, right? Because we're 1 week after the election, in case you're watching this later. And I think from the ally perspective, this is a great book to pick up and understand. You'll learn about our fears. You'll learn about what we go through in this process. You'll learn about, frankly, how much like everyday people we are. You'll learn about what happens to us in the workplace and in friend circles and in coming out and all the difficulties we face. And I hope that it humanizes us for you. And in particular, as allies, I hope that it gives you a perspective to learn more, because I don't hold all the knowledge of the trans people, but I do point you to places to go and learn. The more you learn, the more you can support us. And I think the most important message from me today is that true allyship isn't performative. It's not a bracelet, a blue bracelet that you wear that's been popular the last couple of days. It's not a pen. It's showing up daily. It is getting invested with us. It is getting to know us. It is getting to know the trans person local to you and being their support system in the way that they need it. It is active. And that's what we need our allies to be right now, because frankly, we're 1% of the population, and the ad spend, the largest amount of ad spend in Trump's run up to this election was $215 million, and that's just TV. We know it's probably higher than that. That's the topic they talked about most for 1% of the population. We are not the problem. We are not the fault of what's happened. We are just everyday humans that look just like you, trying to get through our day. And if you can take the time to learn more and find ways to get involved with any organization in your neighborhood or your city or town or your county or your state, it will keep people alive.
Can you speak to allyship just a little bit more from the standpoint, because there's folks that'll be watching, there's people watching this conversation in real time. And then there's obviously people who might come across it. For all we know, there might be some hateful comments in the comments below this video at some point, and it is what it is. Everyone's entitled to their opinion. But allyship in both straight communities as well within the LGBTQ communities themselves, because I feel like a lot of times we're focusing our energy outward of like, hey, straight person who is well-intentioned, here's how to be an ally to this community. But what about the people within the community that may not yet be allies to the trans and non-binary community?
Yeah, I think that's an important distinction. Honestly, when we think about allies, we think about cis hetero people out in the world, right? You're men and women going about their day and their nuclear family, working at whatever corporate job they have, right? But allyship needs to go so much further within our own community as well, right? I'm going to be blunt, we have a huge problem with racism inside of our own community. We have a huge problem with misogyny inside of our own community. I do mean the LGBTQIA plus community. We have those problems in the trans community as well, right? Being trans, being a member of the larger LGBTQ community does not absolve you from your own internal investigations. You have to do that work. And honestly, if you are not looking out for us, who is going to look out for you? Trans women were there at Stonewall. We threw the first brick. We took people into our homes and made spaces for them to be safe and hide. Further, if we are not exercising those deep racist and misogynist parts of ourselves, how are we going to act with other coalitions? Because I can tell you this, there are more marginalized people in the United States than anybody else if we work collectively. So if you're part of this community, trans or LGBTQIA+, do the work to be a true ally, to get active and to understand the parts of yourself that you need to unpack. Be okay being uncomfortable. Because if you don't look out for your fellow human, it's going to be harder for all of us to exist.
Yeah. And I appreciate what you're saying about being active locally, right? Because I think that, some of us, and I definitely want to kind of talk about what you're actively up to right now. I think some of us tend to go toward the national route or even global route sometimes, depending. And I've done my fair share of national advocacy work for the community for many years, as have you. And yet sometimes that idea to somebody to be like, you need to get involved at a national level is just way too overwhelming. So I love how you framed it when you're like, just start in your own neighborhood. Like that is a brilliant place to start. Is like start in your neighborhood, then your town, your county, city, whatever it may be. So you and I feel like both took kind of similar like action steps on Wednesday last week, where it was like, okay, the world is shifting and it's not in favor of a large majority of people that we love, support, and are part of. And in my case, I reached out to all of our authors, yourself included, to say like, hey, we need to start to pivot to really meet this moment, to figure out how do we have to revise, modify how we're talking about our own messages. And that was just kind of like, hey, let's all get on a call and figure this out. What it looks like, who knows? But you, on the other hand, really took some concrete action steps. And so I would love for you to talk about it, because I imagine someone who might have found this conversation somehow is likely looking for this information. So please share what you have started.
Yeah. So let me start with some things to think about, and then I'll tell you what I've been doing. Yes, I've worked on the national level, inside of corporations and out. I've been, on the chair of nonprofit organizations. I've done the work, right? And that's rewarding and it impacts a lot of people. But we can't sleep on the fact that in this coming administration, working at the local level was where we will have the most effect, right? This country is still a state by state organization where state laws more often than not impact federal laws, right? So getting involved in your local community is highly important. When elections come up at the midterms, know the people that are participating and make the right call to vote for them. They are going to impact the laws that affect you personally. So please be involved at the local level. National is great, but you can drive so much impact working in 2s and 3s and 4s that won't show up on the national level. Follow your passions. What are you excited about? When you think of other people and coming at that with a servant mindset, what is it that you feel strongly about? That's what you should work on, right? Because I can promise you this, in the coming years, there will be literally thousands of organizations and thousands of different ways that we need to support people. The way that works for you is the way that works, right? But now to your question of what I've been doing. So over the last couple of days and weeks, I've been more and more vocal, right? I won't be intimidated. I will not comply. I will not obey in advance, and I will not self-censor. I'm going to be myself out in the world because that's who I am. Being someone else has not worked for me. Thus, you have your trans auntie, right? And so as I've talked to people and heard their messages, what I heard most, because I'm in my community, is I watch people's fear take hold, trans people's fear who would need to flee states in the United States. Can you imagine this? Like when we think of the rest of the world, it seems less surprising. In the United States, there are places where I cannot draw a breath, literally draw a breath, without breaking the law. And that's going to increase over the next couple of years. So as I've connected with quite a few trans people and heard their worries and fears, because I'm fortunate, I live in the suburbs of DC. It's quite a safe place for me so far, right? Not everybody has that ability. And I've heard it from a lot of parents of trans kids who are absolutely terrified of what's coming their way for their kids. And being involved in the community as I recognize that what we lack, even though we're really good at passing on our shared information to others, don't really centralize that very well. We have lots of social media sites. If you're into Discord, we have probably hundreds or thousands of Discord servers for trans people, but they're very specific to gaming, community, whatever. But in terms of what do I do now, that's really not an easy thing to sort out at a state by state level. So one of the things I took action on was to create a Discord space at the national level that gives state by state information about what your laws are, the likelihood that you can stay in that state, where you can go, what are your sanctuary states, what are states maybe aren't sanctuary states but are safe. What do you need to know for your own medical advocacy? What do you need to know for your education, right? Building a place for people who are worried about their ability to live to come and get the information they need. Now, I don't have all the information they need. I've only been at this for 48 hours. But in 48 hours, I've already pulled together a team of 20 people helping to research and work on this so that the people who've recently joined our space can start to figure out what to do now, because they have until January 21st to get their plans in order and get going, right? That's what I'm doing. And I could give you 100 examples of what you can do. But the person who's going to best inform what you can do is what you're passionate about, what you care about people. I'm begging you, don't sit on the sidelines. Many of us, including me, have the luxury to sit this one out for the next 4 years and kind of be like, I'll see you in 2028 because of where I live, because of the color of my skin. There are so many people that don't have that ability and whose lives will be drastically impacted. Please lend your privilege and find a way that works for you, because you're going to need to be passionate about it to stick with it for 4 years, because you're not going to see satisfactory results tomorrow. It's a commitment.
I feel like advocacy work in particular is such a slog because it is, you are banging your head against dead ends over and over and over again. And all you have as a group that is working toward the common goal is the vision that one day it may look different.
Yeah.
And so I think it's, you know, when we first started talking, you said the phrase that energy is at its peak. And so I think that there's something really profound about that statement of how to get more people actively engaged right now in this moment when emotions are high, people are fired up, but yet may not know what outlet to channel their energies in. And I think you were saying coalition building before. I think if we collectively focused on how are we all allies and support to other communities, other whatever causes may be, the rising tide will float all boats. And it's a matter of just getting people in those right directions. So I love that your kind of PSA is like, just do something that you are personally passionate about, because you will stick with it, because it is exhausting. And I don't know about you, but like I was saying to somebody the other day, I'm like, I am exhausted, especially from the advocacy side of things. And I started PYP almost 10 years ago at this point, and I switched from the direct on the grounds advocacy work to pivoting to be in roles where I can support people like yourself who are doing on the ground work. Yeah. And it's still exhausting. So how do we engage younger people? There's like two sides, right? How do we engage younger people who haven't gotten the advocacy bug yet? Because I started at 25. So I started real, like right out of like my first job. But then there's also people who, doesn't really matter the age, they just have never really thought about like, how could I really focus on, and I say advocacy, but I really am using that as a much bigger umbrella term of just kind of actively engaging in something that's going to benefit a community that you are a part of or care about. How do we do that? Do you have any kind of insights or any like calls, like an action item someone watching this might be able to take?
Yeah, and let me start with what you do in the middle of this first, which seems kind of weird, but you spoke to it. This type of work, advocacy, activism, resistance, disobedience, is a slog, and it's exhausting. I've done it for years. Even in this past week where I feel wildly energized, I am going to bed absolutely spent every night. And I know that wall is coming probably the middle of next week. It's going to hit me. That's why I'm trying to do as much as I can right now, because when I hit the wall, I can't do anything, right? So I want everyone to understand that this type of work requires some grit and some fortitude, but it requires a lot of self-care. It requires rest. You have to recharge your batteries. I remember not this past Pride, but 2023 Pride, I came out of that absolutely toasted with a lot of speaking engagements. And that was a particularly bad year, as we can recall. That's the year of the whole Bud Light and Target failing us for Pride thing that happened. I did nothing, nothing for actually, the first thing I did after Pride was start writing this book in October. That's how long I was totally wasted. Had no energy, like just nothing. So please pace yourself, find ways to take care of yourself, rest, because we need your energy. We don't need your energy 24/7. Right? Yeah. I'm sorry, what was your actual question? Because I really wanted to speak to that.
I know, I love that, because I think it leads to it's more of a, what advice, given, you know, you are the advice giver, can you give to somebody who's just kind of like sitting here and thinking they might want to do something, they just don't necessarily know what it is? Like, what's an action step they can take? And the advice of pace yourself, Lord knows I wish someone told me that when I was 25, because I went out, you know, full steam real quick, real hard, and definitely was burning out even then.
Yeah, we learned that by finding it out, right? And I know that I'm telling this to people who'll be like, okay, I'll rest. And they will discover this by not resting. Right? It is something you have to experience to understand what true burnout can be like.
Yeah.
In terms of something simple, something today. Do you have $5 to donate? Find someone to give it to. Find an organization to give it to. Find care organizations that are going to help people to move from one place to another if they need to. Look up, it's quite easy to find what's in your area, right? In your town, in your city, what's the local shelter? What's the local political organization that you can volunteer for? What is the local PFLAG chapter doing, or Pride chapter, right? Go, just do some research. Just look around for what's happening in your state. You can almost basically type, how do I get involved in supporting X minority in this state? And the information is there. You just have to spend 30 seconds typing into Google or whatever you use to search for things. But I think, honestly, the biggest thing is making a personal commitment that you will do something today and tomorrow to get started, right? It's like writing a book in a way. We start writing a book not by organizing the whole thing in one sitting or writing our whole first chapter on the first day, but we started ultimately by committing to make time every day to think about what we're writing, to think about what we're building, to organize it slowly. If you commit to yourself to do something today, I don't care how small it is. I don't care if you give $5 to the Trevor Project. You've done something. Find something to do tomorrow. That's how you get started in activism and agency. Find something to keep applying yourself to while going through your life, through your job, through raising your kids and getting to the soccer practice and going to the grocery store or whatever it is you have going on. In your spare time, find a way to reach out and do something small. Very soon, you'll find that it's probably quite a good chunk of valuable work that you can do.
I'm blanking on the name of the book, but it's just read it too, where the concept is if you just improve by 1% a day, that's all you need to do is 1%. It ends up resulting in 37% in a year for an increase. So it doesn't have to be a big change at all. It really does.
No, that is so true. That is actually how I wrote this book. As a person who's can be a little bit, blue sky and kind of all up here sometimes, committing to sit down and write for 10 minutes a day is what got this book done in 6 months.
Yeah.
Because those 10 minutes in a day turned to 30 or an hour or 2 hours. And it also turned into days when I didn't write because I needed a break. That 1% improvement if you read this book and you think about 1% improvement, you will find that is exactly what I'm talking about throughout this book.
And I love that you were saying 10 minutes a day, because I think a lot of times people are like, well, I have to block out a whole hour. I got to block out a half a day. I got to block out a day a week. I got to go lock myself away in a cabin for a weekend. Just got to do what works for you. And something as simple as 10 minutes truly can yield a book that quickly. And I'm sure at the time it felt like it took forever, but it didn't. Really, in the grand scheme of things, it didn't take that long.
Yeah, honestly, you could sit down today with your phone. Go grab your phone right now. When you're done, watch this first, then go buy my book, but then pick up your phone, right? Text a friend. What can we do together to make a change? That's going to start off a lot of conversation, which will lead to, as you collect together in a group, because that's what I started doing in the last week, is I found myself in a group talking about this, and I found myself talking about this, and then I was like, wait, Erica, it's time to put your money where your mouth is. And so I did, right? Phone a friend, talk to a friend and say, what can we do? You all will come to something together. Just make sure that you continue to make connections, build those coalitions, find other groups of support. We cannot get there with you just doing your work. It has to be all of us pushing in the same direction in a variety of ways. It's going to get us there.
I completely agree. And I think for the introverted folks among us, where, the idea of walking into a meeting, a standing organization, that feels overwhelming. So if you're like, hey, I might want to learn about PFLAG, or I might want to learn about the local LGBTQ chamber, or whatever the case may be, grab a friend, find a wing person. Right? I've been networking in Connecticut for 2 decades at this point. And I have a friend who's a ghostwriter, and I sent her an email yesterday saying hey, this is the event that you mentioned to me a little while ago. Let's be wing women together.
Yes.
Of showing up by myself as a she, but it's just more fun when you have someone together. So make it fun. It doesn't have to be this laborious, draining. You can actually feel ignited and inspired to actually really be part of the change that we need right now.
Yeah. Yes, and I love that sentiment. My partner, my wife, is my wing woman. We have been discussing things that we'll do together and separately that are important to us. I've had several friends that aren't part of the trans community. I have one friend that reached out to me last night. It was like, hey, are you okay? I haven't heard from you since the election. I want to make sure you're still with us.
Mm-hmm.
And then we went on to have a conversation about the things that we've been thinking about, which led to action items for her. I didn't suggest that she join my thing. Just talking to me helped her understand what was important to her and what she can do. Like, that's go get a buddy. And I think my other point on that is, like, look, what you do doesn't have to be this altruistic, meaningful thing, right? You can donate clothes to the local women's shelter. That's easy.
Pick up some extra
You
food.
don't have to get out and change the legal system on day one. There are people that are better than you who are working on that, but they need support. This is something I said on social media yesterday. If you're a project manager or program manager, if you work in technology, if you're an educator, if you're a coach, if you are a frontline retail worker, if you are a scientist, a doctor, a lawyer, whatever you do, you have skills right now that you're using at work every day that are desperately needed in community building and organization. You can likely just do what you do at work for the benefit of others.
Oh, I love that takeaway. That I think is like absolute perfection, because that is exactly true. I'm on 3 boards right now. I'm the chair of one, the secretary of the other, and then just marketing broadly on another one. And it truly is just like bringing in someone that just has the skill set, especially marketing. Like, if you have any marketing, communications, writing skills, anything in those creative veins, every board everywhere needs somebody. Every committee everywhere needs somebody with that, hands down. And project management, another great example, just someone who can organize it, someone who knows how to upload a website, like such basic things that you're like, oh yeah, they have it figured out. Chances are they don't have it figured out, or they have someone who doesn't really know what they're doing trying to do it.
And let's bring it down a level, right? You might be a scheduler at your local dentist's office. We need that type of work scheduling things. You might be a salesperson, and your ability to talk to people is vitally important. I don't care what you do. You're using skills that we need today. All you have to do is find a place to apply them. That's it. We need what you do every day, whether you are a stay-at-home parent or someone who leaves the home to work, right? It doesn't matter what you do. You have something to bring that you do already today that is desperately needed somewhere.
Erica, this is magic, like pure, I think, magic, because it's actionable. I love this so much. And the other thing I'm going to say is actionable, because as we're wrapping up, obviously I'm going to plug your book, but I think what I think is really good about your book is that I find myself, because I have been an advocate for the trans community for a very long time, and I've gotten myself into many debates, conversations, heated discussions, etc., over the last 2 decades. And what I think is beautiful about your book is that it is accessible. The way that it is written is accessible. It is not an overwhelmingly large read. It's still got meat on its bones, but it's not a long read. And when you're in those conversations, you can say, maybe you want to check out Erica's work. Maybe this book could be something that would be beneficial for you to just take a look at one of the questions that's answered. Because I think that hearing it directly from you and in a written form is so powerful, because I have found in my own encountering resistance around these topics is that people feel attacked in the moment, even if that's not the intention. Whereas a book, you can say, hey, here's a link to Erica's book. Go check it out. Here's a link to, whatever the case may be, to just give them an opportunity to look at it on their own time. And that's what I love so much, because that's where I really think the impact of your book is going to be made.
I love that. Look, this book is 135-ish pages of words, a little bit more than that, because that's how books work, right?
Yep.
You could read this in a weekend. And it's really easy to read. It is, I think, last count, 47 questions that I get asked the most often. And they're all laid out right there. So you could just turn to a question you want to know about in the book and read about it. And honestly, every question gets answered in less than 1,000 words, right? Yeah. And what I do there is I don't tell you what to do. I help you think about, who am I in the middle of that question? What should I think about? What do I need to put forward? I'm not here to tell you how to live your life. I'm here to help you understand how to have agency in your life.
Yeah. And it's one of those books that you can just flip open. Like I flipped it over page 82, what should I consider when searching for a new job? Like just something as simple as that. You can just read that one little snippet. You don't have to read the whole thing. You can just flip it to leisure.
You can read that one in 4 minutes, I think.
Probably. Yep, absolutely. Erica, I am just delighted that you are part of my world, and I'm so happy that your book is out, especially given, you know, the times that are ahead. I think it's going to be, you know, life-saving in many cases for folks, and I'm just so honored to be kind of part of this journey with you. Is there anything, your website's along the bottom of the screen, so people can definitely check you out there. Any other place you might want to point people to check you out?
I mean, the website is the easiest because it does have all of the places that I'm out there. You can find me on LinkedIn and Instagram and Threads and maybe Facebook. I need to add Blue Sky because I just joined Blue Sky recently, but that'll be on there very soon. You can find me if you just go to it's probably the best source of information in general. So go to that. I do want to say that Jen and Publish Your Purpose has been wonderful to work with. One of the best choices I've ever made. If you are looking for someone to be a partner in bringing about your vision, stop right here.
Not in a paid endorsement.
Not in a paid endorsement, but based on real experience. Not only that, Jen is just a wonderful human being who I literally look forward to every phone call with her and the people that work for her. It has been a joy to go through what is a very difficult process.
Yeah, likewise. It is always a joy to talk to you. And I love where this conversation took us. And I am so appreciative. And who knows what collaborations might come next between you and I, other folks, people collaborating with you. And so if anyone is just kind of interested in the larger conversation, and, you know, obviously they can go direct to you. But if someone's like, oh, wait a minute, I know Jen was talking to somebody, I'm always happy to make the connection. So please just ask.
I've never met anybody with more connections than Jen. So if you need a connection, talk to Jen. I
do get around, is what I always tell people.
That is true.
Thank you, Erica. I really appreciate it. For everyone watching, go to Erica's website. You can buy her book wherever you would like to purchase a book, support your local bookstore where possible, all of those beautiful things. And, you know, continue to, we got a fight ahead. So, you know, let's all, we can do it. I feel confident.
We can do it. We can do it. And we have done it before, and we will do it again.
Sure will. Thank you, Erica. I appreciate it.